Good evening, Mr. Ram Admi. Sriram, how are you doing?
Very well, dear friend. How are you doing?
I am doing fine too, thanks.
That's excellent. It's always good to talk to you, and it's always more encouraging to hear that you are doing fine, so that I get more motivated.
Same on this side, sir.
Yes, sir. What
so,
do you
uh,
have for us?
yeah, absolutely. So, an
Yeah,
exciting evening for us today.
absolutely.
One of the main reasons is several of our loyal our patrons, should I say,
Right.
they had requested that we should try to intersperse our conversations with some meaningful visuals to accompany them, which will
Yes.
make the video more interesting or the AAC series more interesting.
Yes. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
there was another set of feedbacks which I have been receiving consistently is that uh,
Right.
when the ambient noise, we should try to take control of it.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yes.
for example, until this episode of AAC,
Hmm.
I think which is 13, so we have always been cutting AAC in some park,
In the natural
the
surroundings.
natural
Yes.
surroundings, and
Yes.
because of the limitations that we have, technology, I mean, camera and all those stuff,
True.
it always has so happened that there was a lot of background noise, birds, squirrels, and animals, like
Yes.
barking dogs and those kind of things. So, which was a distraction. So that was a consistent feedback that was being received for some time.
Right.
So we had decided when we met some time back that we will try to come up with a new presentation format, and this is the first
Mm.
in that series. So I'm
No,
quite
this
excited for
is
it. Yeah.
Me too, me too. In fact, this looks very exciting and enthralling for me as well. And I hope we are able to address those issues to quite an extent and give a better presentation to all our friend listeners.
Right. That's true, sir.
Yeah,
So for to cut through the or to crack open the new presentation format,
right.
so I just chose this burning topic, which is on
Yes.
umpiring in the game of cricket.
Oh,
So,
that's excellent.
so what are your thoughts on this topic to begin with before we dive in?
Yes, this is a very good topic, and it's a very close topic to my heart because the game of cricket in itself is my favorite topic. And having played the game at the highest level, I take keen interest in every bits and pieces, I would say, or every detail about the game. And this also gives me an opportunity to try to put in my thoughts about umpiring in general and see how much of an value add I can get from my experience. So it's a real good topic, and I thank you for initiating this for us today.
Great, sir. Thank you. So
Yes.
before we just start a deep dive into this topic of today,
Right.
it would be great if you can just provide a brief overview of your cricketing career, whatever was there of it throughout your life so far. That would be great.
Yes, absolute pleasure. I have been a keen cricket lover first, and then a player at the highest level till where I could reach. Right from my school days, I have had an opportunity to represent my school, my college in the game of cricket. I very well remember that we used to have very good cricket matches in the colony where we stayed in Pune. And every month or so, we would have matches. These matches were very exciting. And the best part of this is that I always like to be a fast bowler, and I was a fast bowler for the most part of my cricketing life. And I would like to share that my best bowling performance was against a West Indian team. But now, of course, you would be surprised that when I'm talking about colony, how can I mention West Indies here? But the thing is that when I was overseas in Canada for about 2 years, I had the opportunity to represent the local Kannada Sangha team there in Canada. And there I happened to play the actual West Indian team. And the experience was as if you were playing the real team, the national team. And that happened to be my best bowling, fast bowling performance against them, where I took about 6 wickets by giving 25 runs in about 8 overs. So it was an enthralling feeling. And much before that, yes, we have played n number of matches as children. I have represented my school, I have represented my college, and even I had an opportunity to represent my workplaces also in certain games. So yes, fast bowling has always been a thrilling aspect of my life in cricket, and enjoying and playing it now as well. Yes, today, even now, as I am about 50 years old, but still age has no barrier for the love of the game I have, and so I just still continue playing. Yes.
Oh, fantastic, sir.
Yes.
So, for how long have you played in the season ball, if I may ask?
In the season ball, initially when I started playing the game, I wasn't exposed to the actual what would you call it as the actual aspects of cricket, like a leather ball stuff or something like that, because I would always concentrate playing with a tennis ball in the initial stages of my career. But then, yes, there is a vast amount of difference between a tennis ball and a leather ball. So with a seasoned ball, yes, I had an opportunity to play a couple of matches in the semi-league level, I would say, when I was representing my college in the inter-college fest games and all those things. So for a brief period, yes, I have played with a seasoned ball. And then when I played this game against the West Indian club team when I was in Canada, that time I was exposed to the original Kokabira balls. So that was one opportunity where I had an opportunity to look at the ball as well, feel it, and bowl with it as well. So today, those branded balls are one of the most used ones, I would say. And it was a fabulous experience, yes.
That is fantastic, sir. Very
Yes.
nice to note that.
Yes.
So let us try to know, after having warmed up a bit, let's try
Yeah.
to jump into today's hot topic, which is umpiring in the game of cricket.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty common knowledge that following soccer, I think cricket is the second game. I mean, game with the largest following in the world.
Following, yes, yes.
As far as following is concerned, it's the second biggest game after soccer.
Yes.
So umpiring in the game of cricket also takes a lot of importance. It has surrounded its own controversies. So I just thought we will touch upon a few of those topics today.
Yes, absolutely.
Because even based on my knowledge, the majority, a lot of people are actually fans of the game. A few of them also are players. But when it comes to umpiring, there are even lesser people. So it really tapers down. For example, a million fans of the game,
right.
There could be, let's say, 1,000 players. I mean, first class players, first division players.
Yes.
And for every 10,000 players, there could be an umpire. So something like that. No, the ratio is very skewed today.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just thought we will take a look into this umpiring thing today.
Yes, absolutely.
And
no
try
problem.
to take up a few questions that have been coming around on this topic.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to that.
Yes. So the first and foremost thing, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Is that there is lot of noise or clamor nowadays. Clamor, I would say, for getting rid of on-field umpires altogether and replace it with technology. There has been a lot of interest generated surrounding technology, because technology itself has grown by leaps and bounds. It's a continuously evolving thing as such. Any technology is an evolving thing. That is the key difference between engineering and technology, because technology, like many experts say, is something that is whose workings are still evolving. It's not at frozen or finalized. That is a key differentiator between engineering and technology. So just like that, today artificial intelligence has come, machine learning has come, and so many technology has become very processing power, computational power, and what do you call that, computational image formation or analysis, everything. There's a huge jump in the way technology is today integrated with any game.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, in line with this development, many people nowadays, especially the younger generation, they have this question: why not get rid of the on-field umpire altogether and replace
Right.
technology?
Right.
So this question is very common and keeps on repeating over time. So, what do you have to say on this?
Yes, very interesting question to begin with. As I have also seen the progress of technology in various spheres, and sports is no exception to that. Different types of sports have benefited with the use of technology to a maximum extent, like even the games of soccer or even billiards, snooker, for example. Even if you take a game of hockey or something, it has immensely benefited with the use of technology. Coming back to cricket, yes, I have also seen technology playing a major role in the way the game has changed over the past few years. If you take the advent of the T20 game, which is played on a larger scale today, most of the decisions which go behind a T20 game, I am referring to the game in particular, which is played on the field, is technology driven. So I would definitely agree with the fact that technology has played a major role, and given an opportunity, of course, yes, it will really be beneficial to the game. But since we are discussing the topic on umpiring, and as you have rightly asked, this question was hindering in my mind as well, as to why not replace the on-field umpires with technology. If I would like to begin it this way, like on-field umpires have had the major chunk in decision making right since the game has evolved. There have been decisions like LBW or even no balls, white balls, run out, stumping. All these things have been handled by the umpire in general, except for the fact that if a batsman is bowled, he just needs to lift his finger and the batsman is declared out. Most of these decisions today have been replaced by technology. Again, unless a batsman is bowled. I would say that technology is doing a real good job. But having said that, there are certain decisions which rests on in the hands, I would say, of the on-field umpires. You know, there is a very good saying called as seeing is believing. So even in technology, yes, the gentleman who is in charge of operating the system there sees it, but it is not as specific and precise, I would say, as an on-field umpire might get an opportunity to see that. There are certain decisions which an on-field umpire still has the required amount of, say, knowledge or the required amount of experience, which technology can do it, but it would take some more time for technology to be tuned into actually deciding on those type of decisions. So I would say it's a very good idea to introduce technology into the game, but till it takes shape, I think the on-field umpires are still doing a great job, and I think they will still continue to master the proceedings there till technology takes over on a full scale.
Okay, sir, there are a couple of examples given regarding advent of technology in these days, and how it is more feasible, or why it should be much more feasible to adapt technology in these days and times compared to the past. So I will narrate to you both the scenarios.
Absolutely.
So there is one scenario where today we have, let's say, basically artificial intelligence is used even in the field of medicine.
Yes.
For example, when it comes to detection of cancer or any such ailments in the body, and some low-level surgeries which can be automated using robotic surgery.
Yes.
So these technologies are now playing a very big role in providing a much better and a much more efficient treatment to the patients.
Right.
So much so that even recently, one of my friends, he went through a kidney transplant, which was a robotic surgery, and he was claiming that it felt much better than his first attempt.
Right. Good to hear
So,
that. Right.
yeah, and he's recovering much faster. Within 7th day, he was discharged, and so on and so forth.
Oh,
So,
that's good. That's very nice.
yeah. So basically, technology has started playing a very crucial role in the field of medicine.
Yes.
And with a large amount of success, succeeding in a big time.
Right.
And the key thing or the sentiment with healthcare or medicine is that we are trusting the artificial intelligence mechanism with our life. So this is one postulate.
Right.
Today, we have come to a state where we are even willing to trust our lives to an artificial intelligence system. Point number one. Another use case that has been coming forth is in China, like for example, if you take India today, the judiciary system.
Right.
So recently some newspaper article was mentioning that the sum total of all cases that are outstanding in India, it will take 385 years or something to close them, those cases. That is something insane, right? It doesn't make sense.
It is. Such. It doesn't make sense as such. Yes.
So, China, I remember 15, 20 years back, they embarked on a new venture or idea where low-level cases like a traffic violation or whatever, those kind of things, right? They were able to automate them based on data. And a computer software or for artificial intelligence system, machine learning based artificial intelligence system was trained to provide human like judgment on a given case or an offense. And they tested it for 2 or 3 years, and it was so accurate that it was almost 95%, 99% plus accurate compared to the human judgment.
Right.
It was able to. Now the advantage is it can work 24/7 and keep on giving, because here when it comes to human beings, there is always this weekends, summer vacation, winter vacation, those kind of things.
Right.
Justice is not expedited as such. It takes its own time. Whereas low-level cases, you should be able to mete out the justice fast.
Right.
So, my understanding is today in a country like China, there is already some kind of automated system in place which takes care of low-level crime or the judgment related to those cases.
Right.
So, compared to these situations, that is one, healthcare, where we are trusting our life itself to a AI system. And number two is where judiciary, basically judgment is automated.
Yes.
Both are areas which basically can make or break a country itself as such.
Absolutely. They are very critical to the very existence of a country itself. Yes, right? It can have a yes. Yeah.
So when such complicated requirements themselves can be easily nowadays taken care by AI systems with large amount of confidence and success.
Right.
Why not you can adopt the same thing for a game like cricket, which is nothing but 42 laws and its bylaws? This is the question. What are your thoughts on that?
Excellent question. Actually, I would like to appreciate your thoughtfulness in arriving at this question by describing two really critical parameters which can really make or break a system which runs a country. It's an excellent question. I would like to thank you for presenting this. Let me put it this way. Taking the examples which you have quoted in the various sectors, I would say, yes, technology has been instrumental in giving some sort of a guideline and trying to, get a better understanding even to a common man as to where the country is heading or where the country stands as of now in those two particular sectors. And indeed, it's a credit to technology for having taken it that forward that today, sitting in the comforts of your home, you know what's happening elsewhere in the world and in your own country. Coming back to the game of cricket, yes, indeed, the use of technology can definitely be applied here. But as I said earlier, like the influence of technology to gain that much more percentage of effect in the game will require some time. For example, now, as you would have also seen and we continue to see, where technology is used the most in the game of cricket. For example, now it is used most in giving decisions for a batsman, whether he is out or not, or during a bowler if he bowls a no ball or something like that. So to this extent, the technology has been used. But there are certain other areas where technology can be implied. For example, inspection of pitches, or even, when, for example, a game is obstructed in between due to a bad weather or something like that, or a rainy day or something like that. So to find out whether the pitch is playable again on the same day or not, we can try to get in technology to find out if that condition holds good. But for that, what are the parameters based on which these particular decisions are taken? Presently, it's been handled by the on-field umpires with the vast experience which they have, and of course, abiding by the laws of the game. But for technology to really have a hands down to that depth, obviously it needs to have an interaction with someone called as an on-field umpire itself, and they would be the best people to try and judge in what way technology can solve that particular bottleneck for them also. So what I would say is, sure, it would definitely be a boost if technology can take over the game, but it might need some more time to understand the nuances of the game in a more better way and try to get depth so that the on-field umpires can be thought of being substituted by technology, full and pure.
So there is one more supporting argument to the previous question.
Yes.
Which basically goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
The question tries to draw a comparison between an umpire and an airline pilot. See, because an airline pilot is not allowed to use his experience. Whether you know or not, I don't know.
Right.
But every time a pilot gets into the cockpit and assumes his seat, or the flight engineer for that matter of fact, they each have a checklist, a file.
Yes,
so
exactly.
They should basically tick off all the boxes against each of those checks before they start taxiing the
either before they take off or land, or yes.
And the key reason for this is because even though you will be vastly experienced, there's every chance that you'll overlook some parameter in a system is becoming very complex. The argument here comparing an umpire to the airline pilot is that umpires, the duty of an umpire is to ensure the fair play. That is the underlying, the fundamental argument, the purpose of an umpire. What is the duty of an umpire in cricket? If you ask, the answer is the umpire's duty is to ensure fair play.
Right.
So then what is the definition of fair play? That is the next question. So they say the definition of fair play is nothing but adherence to the 42 laws and bylaws.
Right.
That is, so basically the umpire, what he's going to do is every time a ball is bowled or a bat is swung, or when the teams walk into the field, or there's running in between the wickets, whatever the situation, the umpire is always trying to evaluate each event happening in the field with by comparing it to the loss, the 42 loss and bylaws. And the moment his brain triggers that any one of the bylaws or laws has been violated, then he takes the appropriate action. So the fundamental duty of an umpire is to ensure that it's a fair game, fair play.
Right.
So, and fair play definition is all the 42 laws and bylaws should be adhered to. Right.
Right.
So the point now is the umpire, his experience in so much, right? His experience will hardly be useful. Because the end of day, the only value add he can do is he can be so fast or so much more alert in trying to evaluate more and more laws and try to create, evaluate each and every event happening in the field. So, for example, there is the 42 laws and bylaws, and a person basically qualifies to be an umpire. And then on field, when he is performing the role of an umpire, how fast he is able to evaluate an event in the field as to whether it's a fair play or not, right? So that third part is the only thing where his experience may pay off. He can be faster and quicker as he becomes more and more experienced.
Right.
So they say when it comes to speed, we can never beat the computers. They are extremely fast, many thousands of times faster than us, human beings.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
So this is a very strong argument in favor of automating the umpire or getting rid of on-field umpires, and basically all umpires, including third, totally use AI and machine learning based artificial intelligence solution to automate the umpire. That is the call. So what are your thoughts on this, sir?
Absolutely, yes. I totally agree with you that at a certain point of time, as you have rightly said, technology should take over the on-field umpiring activities to the fullest extent and see that the entire game is automated. But yes, as I said earlier, like there are certain nuances of the game which needs to be understood. For example, as I said, for the analysis of the pitch in general, which an on-field umpire knows the best how he would attend to it. What can be done here in as far as my opinion goes is probably they can give a try, as they have already tried to attack these various other decisions, for example an LBW or a no ball or a caught behind, and now technology has taken over and it gives decisions. They can very well try this in a for example, not in a test match or an international match. Probably they can try this in a Ranji Trophy match, for example, and try to find out how best technology can be used to analyze this part of the game, create a sort of a dummy atmosphere where a ground is not playable due to bad weather or due to a rainy day or something, and try to find out what are the parameters which can be inflicted into technology. At the end of the day, even technology needs to be directed by someone where he can give the appropriate instructions that this particular activity needs to be done till it starts doing on its own. So what I would feel here is try this. There's no harm in trying. You can try this in a domestic game where an artificial conditions like this can be set up, and try to use technology and find out how it helps in these nuances. Something like how to find out the playability of a pitch, or pitch doctoring for that matter, which was also news not so long ago. If there is a damaged pitch or if it's a dangerous pitch to play, all these parameters need to be analyzed for some time and give it some time to really, reach the level of expectations which someone like you and me would love to have it from a technology perspective. And after this, yes, I'm all for technology to take the game forward and take it at a more secured level. Yes.
Right, sir.
Hmm.
So just to lighten up the mood a bit.
Yes,
So who,
absolutely.
according to, are the top few umpires in the world of cricket?
There have been many, but my top three favorite umpires, if I would like to put in chronological order, is Mr. Steve Bucknor from England, who was one of my most favorite umpires. Oh, from West Indies, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Mr. Steve Bucknor from West Indies. And then Mr. Simon Toffel from Australia. And there was one very good umpire in the past who would officiate in the early 70s. You would have heard about him. His name was Mr. Dickie Bird, who had his own style while he was umpiring on the field. So probably these three gentlemen would be stand out as far as my top three umpires would go. But there have been many after them. There have been umpires like David Shepherd and others who have also contributed to the game. And even today, there are umpires like Paul Rifle and all, but who have played the game at the highest levels, and then they have graduated down to take up umpiring as the next phase of their career. So yes, according to me, these three gentlemen would be the standout performers.
Okay, sir, one trivial question now, just to lighten the mood a
Yes.
bit more.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's say there is a match happening between Bermuda and Afghanistan in KSA Stadium, Chinnaswamy Stadium.
Right.
But the umpires are Steve Bucknor and Dickie Bird, as you said.
Right.
So would you go to see the match in person?
Absolutely, I would go to see the match.
I mean, the spirit of the question is to find out, to ascertain whether there is this concept of star umpires. So is it really valid?
It's a very good question, and I'm happy to answer this. I would very well like to go and see the match, not because the umpires are Steve Bucknor and Simon Toffel, but because the game is between Bermuda and Afghanistan. The reason why...
I mean, okay, the context, okay, why I asked, so do you believe in star umpires? Coming back to the topic.
No, I mean, star value is given by a number of people who have rated them and their performance. But at the same time, where I feel the umpiring, of course, I have not been an umpire myself, but with the knowledge of the game which I possess to the best of my abilities, I can say that an umpire would be a full-fledged umpire, even if he officiates successfully in a game which he has not officiated till then in his career. What I mean to say is, even if there is a match between two teams which have yet to upscale their identity and become, international class cricket playing countries. So one advantage of these good umpires going and officiating those games is that it's a sort of an experience for those two teams also to look and find out how best the decisions are analyzed in the highest level of the game. It is an experience for those two teams to learn a lot and to find out what are the nuances of deciding some very key factors like an LBW or even a caught behind or even handling the ball for that matter. I remember there were a couple of games where batsmen were given out handling the ball. To the best of my memory, I remember a game in 1983 between India and West Indies where Desmond Haynes was given out handling the ball playing to Kapil Dev. So decisions like this, they would also, as upcoming countries, it's a learning curve for them. It's an experience for them to find out how decisions are given and to what degree decisions are given. So in this context, I would still love to go and see this game between Bermuda and Afghanistan and being officiated by Steve Bucknor and Simon Toffel, just to, gauge how best they can perform when they are asked to officiate between two upscaling countries and not ICC member countries.
Interesting response, sir. Thank you for that.
Welcome,
So I
sir.
just try to, I like to do a detour now.
Yeah,
Of course, keeping it to the topic as a slight detour. Our topic
absolutely.
is continuing to be umpiring only.
No problem.
So it is a Sydney Test in 2008 between Australia and India.
Right.
That game is very famously remembered as Monkey Gate.
Yes, I
So
understand. I know that.
Andrew Simons was Harbhajan Singh, if you remember.
Yes. I remember. It made a lot of news actually.
Yes, it of course the game made a lot of news for the Monkey Gate,
Yes.
but then actually in an interview to Midday tabloid, local tabloid, Steve Buckner said, so I made two mistakes in the Sydney Test in 2008. Mistake one, which happened when India were doing well, allowed an Australian batsman to get 100. Mistake two, on day 5, might have cost India the game. But still, there are two mistakes over 5 days.
Right.
Was I the first umpire to make two mistakes in a test? Is a question mark. And still, those two mistakes seem to have haunted me. So this is Buckner's own admission.
Right.
So what do you make of this? I mean, is it humility of a guy of Steve Buckner's stature, or do you think probably he was getting, old, or he was fatigued, or maybe there was issue with resting proper, good amount of rest before 2 games, or officiating 2 games, anything like that? What are your thoughts on the importance of umpires requiring to take breaks when it comes to officiating, this kind of ICC countries?
Yes, very interesting question. I would always be of the firm opinion that umpires too require a break, because they face not only physical fatigue but mental fatigue too while they are officiating in the game. Not only on-field decisions, but at times the umpires have to make do with some other unforeseen events like a crowd trouble. For example, we have seen many games being disrupted due to crowd trouble, where the winning team is on the winning way and the crowd wants to, distract them from winning and tries to support the home team which is losing, for example. In this case, the umpires are tested to the maximum because they are the spokesperson between the countries which are participating in that particular game, as well as the crowd which has come to watch the game. And this particular position is quite a tricky position for them, where they have to use lots of their intellect and lots of their intelligence and skills to see that they arrive at a balanced decision so that nobody goes back disappointed at the end of the day. But having said that, coming back to your question about Steve Bucknor, I would definitely say that it's very humble of him to have spoken that way while he was addressing a talk in the TV channels, as you would say. Yes, it was probably an admittance by him as well. Plus, he was very humble enough to display that gesture, because normally the umpires are also quite widely blamed for a decision of the game. For example, we have seen many games, even though the teams have failed, or the failure of the teams to arrive at a positive result, which they would have liked otherwise, they will either blame the umpires or the pitch and everything, and they would like to cover up their own performance. So this is another very critical aspect which an umpire has to face. But yes, having said that, yes, he too is not short of testing moments like this. And as far as Steve Bucknor goes, it was a pure gesture of humility on his behalf.
Right, sir. So now I just move on to a more serious question.
Right.
Continuing to keep with this topic of umpiring.
Absolutely.
Now, there are 6 laws and bylaws,
right,
under which a ball can be called as a no ball. Okay. So I'll just say those laws for reference.
Right.
Law 40, Sublaw 3 which takes into account the wicket keeper's position at the time of
Right.
delivery.
Right.
Law 41 sub bylaw 5, it needs to take into consideration onside field limitations. Because nowadays power play and how many people can be in circle, outside circle, the 20
Yes,
circle, those kind of are there, right? So that's
yes,
one
the
actually.
rules of the game have changed also, right?
Yes,
these
so
days.
that for law 41.5 is that one, limitation of onside fielders. Law 41 bylaw 6, it talks about the fielders not to encroach on pitch. Law 42.6 talks about dangerous and unfair bowling, probably body line.
Right.
Law 42.7 talks about dangerous and unfair bowling action by the umpire.
Right.
And then law 42 bylaw 8 is evaluation of whether a delivery was a full high pitched ball.
Right.
That means going over the shoulders maybe. Yeah.
Bouncers and beamers
Bouncers
and all this.
beamers.
Right. Right.
So these are the 5 or 6 laws and bylaws which need to be evaluated for when the ball is delivered.
Right.
So in addition to, see, that's what I'm saying, in the bowlers overstepping and all, everything comes under these laws. It gets covered.
Yes.
And the bowler not declaring his approach side, whether it's onside, offside, like overarm or
Right. He has to inform
over the wicket or around the wicket. All that he needs to declare, right? So
yes.
If anything that is missed, basically it can be called as a no ball.
Yes.
So
in fact, even if he doesn't at the beginning of his overs, like even if he doesn't convey that he is coming right arm over or right arm round, that's considered as a no ball. Yes.
I remember actually even Shane Warne has a very frequent this habit of switching, over the wicket and around the wicket.
Right.
And once I think on a few occasions he has been called a no ball because he forgot to tell the umpire.
Right. Okay.
I don't know whether you recollect that kind of incidents. I know I recollect those.
I don't recollect one particular incident with Shane Warne as such, but yes, I have seen many people having called no balls by the umpire,
especially when the batsmen are of two this thing, right hand left hand combination.
Yes.
Shane Warne always keeps trying to switch side, bowling side.
Exactly.
Anyway, let that be on one side.
Right. Okay.
So basically, what I was trying to tell.
Right.
Some of these laws or bylaws have to be evaluated by the strikers and umpire.
Yes.
While some of them have to be evaluated by the bowlers and umpire.
Okay.
What I'm trying to arrive at is the fact that calling a no ball is a very complex task involving both the on-field umpires and both of them evaluating a certain number of parameters. Everything has to happen in an instant.
Absolutely. Yes.
So isn't this a classic candidate for automation? The reason why I'm asking is because I would like to take you back to our World Cup, which happened in 2019, right? So we saw that the fields were actually having at least 24 cameras spread across 360 degrees.
Right.
And there was also the flying bat, which was taking the overhead shot, the picture of the field, what it was happening. So we got stunning visuals and we were able to see each match in a way that we have never seen it before in the past, before that.
Yes, I recollect
that. The level of presentation that happened in the last World Cup.
I think it was the highest level of presentation. Yes.
Highest level of presentation.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt. Yes.
But then now if you have 24 cameras spread across 360 degrees of the field, and if you have overhead flying vampires or bats that they call going around, it is all the more easier to basically compute or evaluate this many conditions at the time of delivery at a much faster pace and more accurately, right? What are your thoughts on this?
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you because, taking the subject of no balls, as you rightly specified, there are 6 to 7 parameters which actually help the umpire judging a no ball. But along with that, there is something like a front foot no ball, or even using the crease not to the fullest extent. If a bowler bowls behind if he just bowls from behind the crease as well, at times even if I'm not wrong, even that is judged as a no ball. Of course, I stand corrected. Uh, yes, taking these things into account, I would definitely go ahead with you to infuse more level of technology to try and catch these very, very minute decisions which can play a huge role in a game, especially when it's a tight game. And already certain decisions with respect to no ball and all are already being judged by technology, if I'm not wrong. Except for the beamers or bouncers. I think even that needs to be just fed into the technological system as to what are the parameters which judge the height of a ball, not just the waist height, but even how high from the batsman's head or something it has to go before it's judged a no ball. Similarly with the wide balls as well, like how far away from the off stump, how far away from the playing crease the ball needs to be delivered to call it as a wide ball. Because as I remember right now, there are different rules in a one-day game and a T20 game compared to a test match as to how even wide balls are being judged by umpires these days. In a T20 game, for that matter, just a little bit outside the off stump or leg stump, he calls it as a wide, but that's not in the case of test matches. But yes, coming back to the theory of no ball, I would definitely agree with you that it definitely is a classic case for technology to take over sooner than later, so that dubious decisions can be caught and the sanctity of the game can be retained.
All right, sir. Interesting response.
Yes.
So moving on, I have one more kind of a detour question for you.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on this concept of benefit of doubt to the batsman?
Very interesting question. Very interesting question. In fact, if you would ask me, I am also a bit perplexed as to how these decisions are arrived at as benefits of doubt. Maybe not being an umpire to a fullest extent, I may not be able to give you a perfect reply to this question. But again, as far as my experience goes or my having viewed the game in general goes, I feel that these decisions are arrived only at those moments where it is even difficult for the umpire himself in general to find out whether the batsman is out or not. Where there are very, very tense and tense moments which come up in a game. For example, you take out stumping by the wicketkeeper or something, or even a run out affected by a close-in fielder. At times, it's a very, very delicate decision where either the batsman has grounded his bat. I'm talking in the case of a run out, whether the batsman has grounded his bat to the fullest extent or something, or a part of his bat has been grounded and the next part of his bat has been in the air or something. Because decisions are arrived even keeping these things into picture. So, I mean, when it really comes to a certain stage, looking at the stage where the game is, probably if the umpire is not in a position to really make the correct decision, he probably gives the benefit of the doubt to the batsman. But this decision called as benefit of doubt, I think by and large now, I think it has been minimized due to the arrival of technology again, because technology can catch these sort of errors in minutes. So this is where again, I am thankful to technology that certain dubious decisions which would have otherwise gone in the shape of benefit of doubt and all those things now are pretty firmly and more authoritatively arrived at due to the presence of technology.
Right, sir. There is one very hotly debated question ever since the World Cup last 2 years back.
Right.
Many people believe that it was the umpire's decision that turned the game in favor of England, the finals.
Between India and England?
between New Zealand and
New Zealand. Yeah, India lost. Yeah, right. Correct. Right.
So it was a clincher, no? It was edge of seat.
Yes. It
Until
was.
the last ball, it was a highly entertaining final.
Yes.
But ultimately, that running between wickets and England captain diving to hit his bat to the stumps, it is again, ultimately, it was the umpire's ruling that basically decided the outcome of that game.
Right.
World Cup final. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think ultimately an umpire should be able to decide the fate of a World Cup final?
Quite a nice question, actually.
Yeah, first of all, do you agree to that? I mean, many people are saying that. What are your thoughts first? Do you agree that, or do you accept that it was umpire's decision as well, which influenced the outcome?
To a certain degree, yes, I would say, because I mean, I actually fail to recollect the finer moments of that final now. But to the best memory which I have about that game, it was really a thrilling game.
Yeah, an overthrow happened in the last. It went into overtime.
Right.
Or super overs, they call it, right?
Right.
So it went to super overs and it was a tie. So basically, that is when an overthrow happened and the running between wickets. Ultimately, it all led to a lot of on-field confusion.
Right.
And eventually, the umpire called it in favor of England. That is what happened.
But I mean, but maybe yes, like an umpire may not find the need, I would say, to involve himself to such an extent that he needs to control the decision of a final. I mean, to a World Cup final.
I beg to interrupt. But this is actually just as per the cricketing laws. The 42 laws and bylaws, they empower the umpire to play such a role. So my question to you was, how do you see this law? Does it make any sense, or should it be changed, or what do you think?
No, I feel that, I mean, because like there is no other person who really is official, because any critical decisions of this manner has to be by default handled by the umpire, because he is the chief person who is officiating the game. Now, of course, yes, you have a third umpire or a match
referee. It was not
a
unilateral decision. It is on-field umpires consult each other and then they give it out. But nevertheless, it was pretty strange that an outcome was hinging on an umpire's decision. Rather than the merit of the game, right?
Absolutely, I agree with you.
I don't know, because many people say that New Zealand should have won it.
I agree with you, because, in such crunch situations and in such critical matches like a World Cup final, there are many things which play a part. Emotions run high between the fans of two teams, and all those things are also there. But yes, everybody would like their team to win. But if any decision has to be arrived with this much amount of delicacy involved, then I feel that I think it should be left to a couple of more people to judge that particular situation than just leaving it to the umpire or something like that. So, but I mean, yes, as I said earlier, I mean, by default, they are the supervisors of the game. They are in charge of the game. So the first benefit would go to their decisions itself. But yes, one team would be definitely hard done by whatever decision they take. It's at the end of the day, it's us audience who take the best enjoyment out of it sitting in the stands. But the amount of the tension which is faced by everyone, including the umpires on the ground, it is humongous. So leave alone, of course, if I say that compared to the other countries, there is another problem which exists in India, is the political twist which is given to each and every happening here. Because, for example, if India was involved in that game and India would have lost, for example, due to that particular umpire decision, then it would have become a huge political issue for reasons better known to people who create that issue. But that is a difference between our country and the others. Elsewhere, I don't think it is taken to that extent, where they just say, yes, you are the umpire, you are the boss. Probably you should have done better, and they just be done with it. Not like that here. I mean, here 10,000 people are involved. After that, game is over. So, having said that, still, yes, the umpires are the bosses when it comes to judging a game. And I mean, according to law, probably we need to hear what they say.
Right, sir. Now, suppose you are wearing the hat of a lawmaker, a cricketing lawmaker.
Right.
Because ultimately, whatever law you make as a cricketing lawmaker is the one that is going to be implemented by the umpires on the field.
Yes.
Okay. So, given this situation, and assuming that you are in charge of making laws, cricketing laws,
right.
What would be your thoughts on this concept of monketing?
Interesting question again. Very interesting question. Well, to be very honest, I haven't had a clear understanding of that particular event which happened, monketing, as yet. So, I mean, what if you could just enlighten me what exactly happened, then I'll be able to.
Yeah, monketing is when a bowler tries to do the run up.
Right.
At that time, before he completes his delivery, if he sees that, if he notices that the non-striker is outside the crease, he can stump him out without the.
Oh, that okay. That is referred to as monketing, is it? Okay.
We know Mankad was the first one who did it. Subsequently, there is a very complex set of laws associated with it. Because monketing as an it has to be taken, it has to be evaluated from the perspective of a no ball.
Right.
Rather complex. We saw that some time back. No ball itself, if it has to be evaluated, it requires the evaluation of 6 parameters by 2 umpires on field.
Absolutely.
So over on top of that, if the bowler is allowed to stump the non-striker before delivering, so the situation which you are giving, putting it on top of the no ball evaluation.
Right.
So the spirit of the question is, what are your thoughts? I mean, should monketing be allowed legally? I mean, or was it a mistake to have accepted that as a part of the game because it adds to the complexity and the umpire's burden?
That's a very nice question. I would say that, I mean, the event which, of course, is being described as monketing, I would say that yes, if it is governed under the law or something, like whether a batsman can be, a non-striker can be run out before the ball is delivered, and if he is out of the crease, then it can be. And again, these sort of decisions play a pivotal role, looking at the various stages a game goes, because at times I have also seen bowlers doing that. But then finally what happens is that it is just, a gesture of awareness which a bowler actually gives to the non-striker, saying that, hey man, you're out of your crease, and I am the good Samaritan here. I'm not going to get you out of the stadium or something like that, get you out of the ground or something like that. So these days, that is taken more as a, creating an awareness sort of a situation where the bowler tries to.
Yes, sir. Sorry to interrupt you here.
Yeah.
See, the spirit of the question is that the more complex the rules of a game become,
right,
the more error prone will be the umpire's job.
Yes.
And audience also will start losing interest if too many rules have to be, even because when audience watch a game, they also try to evaluate these parameters depending on their knowledge.
Yes.
So if the laws become too complicated and large,
yes,
the human error becomes more, and the overall engagement quotient of the game also becomes less. And in its worst case, in its worst form, it could even be just like fighting a case in a court of law, right?
Exactly.
So
yes.
The spirit of the question is, do you think it's already these laws and bylaws are too complex, they should be simplified, or there is still scope for them to become more complex? What is your thought?
No, they definitely need to be simplified because the as you rightly said, the more complex the laws are, the rapid decrease in the interest, not only for the players after a particular period of time, but also to the people who come to watch the game. And this becomes more specific, especially when you are playing a test match, because test matches are distributed over 5 days, and if these different laws come into picture for some unforeseen reason or something where you'll have to compromise with the loss of time as well, and as it is, people now would like to have a result oriented game in whatever they watch. So then at the end of the day, people will say that time lost is due to these things and all those things. But keeping those viewpoints in mind, I definitely agree with you that the existing laws to the best possible extent can be minimized, and they can be tried in more so they should be used in occasions where really their importance is felt, not in every occasion where probably you can do a bit without it. So I definitely agree with you that these things have to be minimized to retain the interest of the game for everyone.
Okay, sir. Moving on, one trivial question now to lighten the
Right.
mood.
Right.
So, an off-task question. I mean, observation is that most of the umpires today,
Yeah.
that is, those who officiate this matches that are worthy of telecast. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yes.
Whether you want to call it first class, A class, A division, whatever,
Right.
or above. I mean, those umpires who appear on TV,
Right.
most of them are old. They are in their mid or late 40s and then beyond.
Okay.
So, this observation, I mean, why do you think umpires are old?
I mean, my opinion here would be some of them would have either been graduated as an umpire after their playing days are over. So probably once they finish their playing days at the age of 30 or something, then many people they do take up into umpiring, as I mentioned the name of Paul Rifle, who was a former Australian fast bowler who has now taken up umpiring, and even Simon Toffel for that matter, who was playing first class cricket for Australia. Later on, after his playing days were over, he took up into umpiring. So yes, given that context, probably the time where people graduate into umpiring after finishing all those initial prerequisites required, that will take some amount of time and some amount of years for them to get into the actual groove of things. So yes, at that time, if you look at an umpire, maybe considering the years past, he might already give you an older look. But having said that, there have been some umpires, and people are taking umpiring at a young age also. I mean, people who are interested to take up the career as an umpire. I have seen young umpires come to the field as well, and trying to give a shot to that. So I feel that in the years going ahead, you will have a mix of both.
Okay. So continuing in the same lighter vein.
Right.
So there is one strongly held belief that umpires can never enjoy the game that they're officiating, irrespective of what kind of stars. I mean, maybe Shane Warne is bowling to Sachin Tendulkar, but the umpire cannot really visualize it that way. He needs to look at the ball, bat, pitch, and he has to just keep on continuously evaluating the loss.
Yes.
And as a result, umpiring is really, although it looks so good on TV to stand next to Sachin Tendulkar or Shane Warne,
right,
it's not so glamorous as such. It is highly stressful job, is what it is believed. So what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I would agree with you there as well, because no game is an enjoyable game for an umpire as such, because of the quantum of pressure he has to face while officiating any game, be it be cricket or soccer even, because soccer is such a vibrant game that enthusiastic and emotional fans can get down to that level that they can go and even cause physical harm to a referee or an umpire. So definitely it is not an enjoyable game for him to really feel excited about the game which he officiates, because there could be cricket. Yes, it's always looked at as a gentleman's game, but these days, looking into the various turns it takes and various percentages of the tension involved with the game, even good people can turn a bit violent. So both of us would agree with the fact that very rarely we would have seen a player of the quality of, say, a Rahul Dravid or even a VVS Lakshman or even a Tendulkar getting upset with an umpire looking at the position of a game. They have been gentlemen cricketers all through. So, but yes, despite having people like them, still an umpire wouldn't enjoy the game he's officiating, because anytime due to the complexity of the situation, anything can happen. So he needs to be better prepared for those things.
Okay. So now coming back to a more serious position, keeping the topic of umpiring.
Right.
So in the recent years, it is observed that more and more younger people are trying to become umpires.
Yes.
And there is a process to be followed. The process
Yes.
in India is to become a BCCA certified umpire is to first basically apply for an exam or a qualifying exam with the local cricketing body.
Right.
Which, for example, if you are in Bangalore or in Karnataka, it will be the KSCA.
Yes.
Every once in a year or once in 2 years, they conduct a written exam, which you need to pass, and then you will be allowed to officiate in some low-level games. After 1 or 2 years of experience, you will be able to apply for BCCA certification,
right,
which involves a medical test and a practical exam as well.
Right.
And of course, each of these come with coaching. This is how it is. It's a complex process to become a BCCA certified umpire.
Yeah, to get enrolled as an umpire.
Get enrolled as an umpire.
Right.
And once you become a BCCA certified umpire, then comes the challenge of finding opportunities to officiate.
Right.
So, commercially, as far as I know, the star umpires make a lot of money.
Right.
They even make up to like 1.5 lakhs per day to officiate a game, or a game level. If it is T20 or if it is a test match, they get paid at least 40,000 rupees in Indian rupee terms, if not more, if it is in India. So at that highest level, there is money.
Right.
But the process is so full of, bureaucratic red tape.
Right.
Exam, coaching, medical evaluation, exam, coaching, practicals, like that, it goes step by step, experience.
Yes.
It goes on and on, right? So, the more the number of steps involved in getting certified, the more the scope for, let's say, corruption.
Right. Absolutely.
Or malpractice, I would say malpractice.
Malpractice, yes. Okay, sure.
That is point number one.
Right.
And the second point is, today the remuneration of an umpire could be, first class umpire could be very high, or it may sound lucrative.
Right.
But it's a matter of supply demand as such at the end of the day. So as more and more umpires are getting born, or getting created, supply will become more, there will be more number of umpires available to officiate, and eventually the per day fee may drop. That is pure economics.
Right.
So this is a very strong argument in favor of automating the umpire using artificial intelligence. They say if AI is used, software technology is used to basically automate the umpire, and which means on-field umpires can be got rid of, even third umpire, all the DRS, everything can be taken away. Completely it will be software technology based.
Right.
In which case this entire procedure, red tape procedure, all procedure is totally gone.
Right.
So it brings down the scope of corruption, or that is one argument in favor of bringing technology into the game and automating the umpire. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, of course. It's quite a it's quite a good development whenever it happens, because at the end of the day, even getting qualified as an umpire, as you rightly say, involves many steps. And initially, he needs to know the game in full, at least understand the game in full, because I have even heard people who have not played the game at the highest level becoming umpires with good knowledge and exposure. I would definitely agree with you, because it does minimize a lot of complexities, which leads to forming an umpire at the end of the day, because it's not just one test, it is tests after tests which he has to take, and finally he might have to officiate in an international game as well for him to progress in his career as an umpire. Here, yes, technology would do a good job if it is induced, but as I said again, it should be induced in phases, because at the end of the day, even technology can go wrong at some stage or the other. So getting a foolproof technology, for example, to replace the umpiring as a profession in general is definitely a possibility. But it might take some time, because again, the game is spread over into so many different issues. And for technology to come at a time and try to handle all those things might be a little bit difficult. But with the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning and Internet of Things, which is really taking the world by storm, I don't think it should be long before even they are introduced into games like these, and where you have people handling them, knowing everything. So yes, it's a good idea. Definitely, it's a good idea to see technology taking more prominence. But yes, it would take some time, as I foresee it. But there is a sure shot possibility that it will happen.
So how long do you think before that day comes, sir?
I mean, I can't give you a clear picture of that, because it
No, the
might
reason
be
why
another.
I ask you is because you have an advantage which not many people in this world today have, which is
Right.
barring the first couple of World Cups. No, you have been able to witness almost 80% of the cricket game and how it's evolved.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you have been an avid fan and you have got the access. I mean, the commentaries, radios, TV. Because
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
early access to television, so many things, right? So you have a unique position where you have been able to observe this game for a long time now.
Yes, absolutely. No doubt about
especially
it. Yes.
100% of the history of cricket, starting the introduction of technology in it, right? You are witness to it, 100% of it.
Yes, so at least a witness, yes. If not being
because I
completely
think the third umpire concept, where the DRS came and where the green light and red light came, right?
Right.
That was probably the very first instance of technology getting introduced into the game, and that is also in the 90s, early 90s or something, late 80s.
90s, yes. I do remember. Yes.
So you have the advantage today compared to many youngsters or Gen Z or whatever millennials they call, in the fact that you have been able to witness the role of technology in the game, 100% of what has happened till date.
Right.
So you have that advantage of knowing how technology has been consumed by the game so far, and how rapidly it has got adopted, and especially teams like Australia, right, which are always on the forefront of adopting technology in the game.
Right.
Because they came with the pink ball, concrete pitch, so many innovations they have done, right?
Right. Absolutely.
They have come up with so many ways to make a pitch, a batsman's pitch or a bowler's pitch, creating the density. I mean, so many things. Technically, they are so advanced. Australia tries to experiment so much.
Yes, it does.
You would agree to it. So my question is, given that your hindsight on the adaptation of technology, how far do you think in the future we are when umpires will get replaced totally by technology?
I think probably with the amount of periodic rise in the game, as you rightly said, which I have been aware of, uh, I think it would take roughly around another 15 to 20 years. Probably this is the time period which I foresee, because compared to the other countries, every decision which happens in our country has something to do with the larger decision makers. And you very well understand what I mean by larger decision makers, because even if ICC is the head of cricket, which formulates every policy and laws and everything, but unfortunately our country is such where powers to be can make even the ICC disagree with its own laws. So, giving a fair margin to all these things, probably I foresee another 15 to 20 years before technology can take over the game in a full-fledged manner. Because here, everything said and done, there are a lot of issues which govern any particular activity to happen. And cricket is no different, or sport is no different. So keeping that in mind, yes, another 15, 20 years should be my foresight.
Okay. So supposing a youngster of today, 24, 20 something youngster, comes to you asking for advice on taking up umpiring as a career, what will be your advice to him?
I would definitely give him a boost by saying that, yes, if he is a sport fan in general, first of all, he needs to be a sport fan. And secondly, he needs to be a cricket lover. I won't say fan, because cricket lovers need not be fans in general. There are many people whom we have seen that they have either played the game but not watched it, or there have been people who have only watched the game but not have played it. So I think these two issues need to be first worked out to find out how much of an interest the young man has to take up umpiring as his career. Probably if he is keen to face the challenges in the coming years, and also, yes, a bit of the previous question's answer to be included here. Yes, I would always also tell him the effect of technology, which is coming up rapid and fast, and how long a career you would have in cricket is, at this moment, it is not visible to either you or me. So looking at all those aspects, I would give him a boost to take up the game, because it's a challenging position at the end of the day. So if he likes to take it forward as a career, then well and good. I would always motivate him to take up the career.
Okay. So I'm taking your attention to one more of the recent developments which happened some months back, few months back, which is nothing but the bio-bubble games of the, what do you call that, our Indian IPL, which happened in
which happened in Dubai, the last IPL.
Yes. Right. Of course, the key thing was it was a spectatorless game.
Yes.
Which means as far as the spectators were concerned, they were watching it on a TV in a virtualized presence way. Right. And the players on field did not get any audience the spectator feedback, because the spectators were absent. So that also had to be virtualized.
Right.
In terms of playing applause or whatever it is on speakers. Right. To create an artificial presence.
Yes.
The way I see this development is that we are one step closer to virtualizing the game. So my question to you is, see, football has always led the world of sports when it comes to virtualization and adopting latest technology, like virtual reality, augmented reality, those kind of concepts.
Yes.
And even today, video games have come where a person sitting in a couch can impregnate himself on the screen as one of the world's top players like Cristiano Ronaldo or somebody,
Right.
and then he move that character on the screen using the remote control in his hand to play as if he's CR is playing the game. He's in control of the Cristiano Ronaldo, and the character Cristiano Ronaldo caricature is in control of the ball, and the game happens. So it is much more immersing and much more engaging and much more. I mean, it's a totally virtualized thing, right? It's more private.
Yes.
And there is already early versions of cricket for the cricket game also. There are early versions of virtualized game.
Right.
So in a virtualized game of cricket, how important is umpiring? Or is it totally irrelevant? What do you think?
That's a very interesting question. According to me, it could sound irrelevant to a certain extent until technology takes over. And as we rightly have spoken about the influence of technology which needs to get into the game. So probably, yes, till the technology takes over full and to the fullest extent, I feel that even in a virtual atmosphere, I think an on-field umpire would play certain role to a certain extent. But yes, with the advent of this playing, for example, testing a tournament of the caliber of and quantum of IPL, for example, before empty stands, and fortunately or unfortunately, yes, it yielded the results as far as the organization goes, and everybody claims it to be a big success. But if people ride on that success, yes, this could definitely be a thought-provoking question for many to answer. I mean, with my limited knowledge of umpiring, I could only say that till the influence of technology reaches such a stage that it can really, be the center point of a virtual game. I think on-field umpires would be persisted with. And later on, yes, as and how the effect of technology goes deeper and deeper, definitely an alternative will always be thought about. So with the amount of experience, with the amount of knowledge I have, I think, yes, this would be my response. Otherwise, probably this would be a tough question even for a umpire of Steve Bucknor to answer. So, so I mean, you've given me an opportunity to become Steve Bucknor at least for once in my lifetime. So it was quite interesting, and thanks for that question. Yes.
Yes, sir. So one question before we close.
Right.
How important is insurance for umpires, sir?
No, yeah, I mean, our viewers need not take me wrong because of my laughter on this question, because it's a very sensitive question. Because my laughter was actually, it just something came up my mind and then I just laughed about it. But yes, in all seriousness, umpires should take up insurance, because at the end of the day, they are amidst one of the most uncertain moments they would ever face. Probably it can be even worse than an accident, or it could be an accident by itself, because
so you mean to say occupational hazard is very high?
It is, because the very way the game has changed of late. Take for example a bowler bowling a beamer or something like that, or something. I mean, even a batsman hitting a straight drive or a lofted straight drive. These days, umpires try to take evasive action by ducking or something like that. But every time there may not be a occasion where he might be able to save himself. Probably it might get a bit nastier where he might even injure himself. So obviously, yes, as players are insured, probably umpires should also be insured. And it is the responsibility of the board to take that up, because at the end of the day, they also form a critical parameter of the whole system called cricket. So I would very much agree to the fact that umpires should be insured. Yes.
Great, sir. Thank you. So, parting thoughts from my side before we close
Yes.
this session is
Yes.
based on this past 1 hour's conversation, very interesting one with you. What I learned is that
Yes.
the march of technology and AI in automating the umpire and getting rid of the on-field or when the umpires in the physical form, it cannot be stopped.
Yes.
It's a matter of time only. That is
Yes.
point
Yes.
number one.
Absolutely. Yes.
So point number two is in a more virtualized setup. It is going to be all the more, I mean, as virtualization increases and as technology's uptake by the game increases, it will not be a lucrative career as such anymore. So these are the takeaways that I have with me based on our conversation so far. What are your closing thoughts?
Very well similar to what you have mentioned. It's only a matter of time, yes, before, people think beyond physical officiators and try to, technologically drive the game forward. And yes, it only, it only improves the quality of the game, and it also takes the game to the next level. But I mean, full respects to the on-field umpire for the ways they have been conducting themselves and for all the tough moments which they have to face. Because I have had an opportunity to speak to one of my very close friends, Mr. B.K. Keshav, who has been a first-class umpire in his earlier days. So when I had a talk with him regarding umpiring couple of months ago, he was also of the opinion, and of course, maybe it required a bit more in-depth analysis between us to really understand the ifs and buts involved as we have done today. But yes, even by interacting with him, I also learned about some of the nuances of umpiring, and taking all that and compiling it into one particular decision. I would say that yes, with all due respects to the people who are officiating on the field, I mean, there is a promising career for them too. Like if they can get hold of some technology themselves, probably they would be driving technology to see their own replacements. So I think, yes, all in all, they've been doing a great job. I mean, my full respects and my salutations to umpires on field, even the match referees, third umpires and all. They've really been doing a great job, and till it lasts, I am very confident that they will get a good account for themselves and take it forward from here.
Right, sir. An afterthought question to you again.
Yeah.
Before we close this out.
Right.
Would you consider becoming an umpire?
Quite an interesting question. I would say I would not be that inclined as of now, though. I mean, in one of our questions, I have said that I would motivate a young umpire to take up the career. But right now, I would be more interested if I am trained as a virtual umpire rather than an on-field umpire.
Great thought, sir. Thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed talking to you this evening.
Same here. Absolute pleasure.
Right. Yes. So until hope we'll keep meeting and doing this new format going forward into the future with more interesting topics that will add value to our patrons.
Absolutely, because I, for once, have really enjoyed this new concept of our discussion, which has been away from the natural greenery for the first time. But the greenery still remains, but it's not in nature. That's
It's
the difference.
virtualized.
it's, it's virtualized, and
Right.
yes, it's been an excellent experience as always talking to you and discussing one of my most favorite games. And umpiring, yes, I have learned a lot answering your questions, because really appreciate the depth of questions which you have posed, and I hope I have been able to do some justice with my broken knowledge on umpiring.
Right, sir.
So,
Time will tell,
I mean,
yes.
yes, I mean, it's been an enjoyable discussion, and look forward to many more like this in the futures to come. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the rest of the evening, whatever is left of it, and wish you a good night until we meet again. Bye-bye.
I think I'll have to wish you a very good morning now. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day ahead. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Yeah. Bye.